Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This is the first Sabbath or Shabbat of the year on the fourth or third, depending on your reckoning, Yom of the year. And we're going to be continuing in our reading of 4th Ezra, where we had just finished off, where Ezra had seen he was going out in the field. He'd already had multiple visions, and then he had been told to, now he was allowed to eat, but it was only of the flowers of the field and what he can find out where no man had built a dwelling, and he was supposed to stay there for a while. I believe it was only 2 yamim or 2 days after the encounter with the messenger. And then he has an incident where he meets a woman who's in distress. She gives her story of the birth of her son and his loss, their wedding celebration. And then she, in his trying to comfort her, when our Creator finds out he's sincere in his lamenting for Zion and Yarushalem and the situation that his people are in, she's changed into a city or Yarushalem, but he didn't know that at the moment. And then he was confounded, and in his being confounded, he cried out for the messenger that had been with him previously to return and to help him comprehend what was going on. So the messenger had returned and then spoke with him. I believe we covered what had happened, right? Just one moment. All right, so we left off after he had already received the explanation from his vision, but we're going to recap starting right here at verse 25 of chapter 10. And this is of the vision of the Shamayim Yarushalem. And it came to pass, while I was talking with her, behold, her face upon a sudden shined exceedingly, and her countenance glistened, so that I was afraid of her and mused what it might be. And behold, she suddenly made a great cry, very fearful, so that the earth or eretz shook at the sound of the woman. And I looked, and behold, the woman appeared to me no more, but there was a city built, and a large place shown itself from the foundations. Then was I afraid and cried with a loud voice, and said, where is Oriel, the Melech, who came to me at the first? For he has brought me into this overpowering bewilderment, and my end has turned into corruption, and my prayer to reproach. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Oriel is literally the light of El, or my El is light. He is the messenger that's in charge of all the luminaries of the Shamayim, as explained in the book of Chanok. So he's over all the children of light, and that could be why he was principally sent here to Ezra. I can't say that for certain, but the aspects of the different manifestations of when these messengers are sent have different meanings or reasons. Ezra, just like Chanok, was being given illumination or revelation, light, about things to come, his situation he was in, things of the past. So Oriel being present and the messenger delivering that seems significant, because they were the children of light being given that to shine upon others. In the same way, in Tobiyahu, when there's affliction and need for remedy and healing, Raphael was sent as the messenger that was helping in the situation. In other instances, there's different messengers that are doing things, like Gabriel or Gabarel, the mighty man of El, who was announcing the Besora or the Tob news to come in the advent of both Yahukanon, the forerunner, and Yahushua, the word. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at there as you go. Verse 29, And as I was speaking these words, behold, the Melech who had come to me at first came to me and looked upon me. And behold, I lay there like a corpse, and I was deprived of my comprehension. Then he grasped my right hand and strengthened me, and set me on my feet, and said to me, what is the matter with you? And why are you so troubled? And why are your comprehension and your thoughts of your heart so troubled? And I said, because you have forsaken me, and yet I did according to your words. And I went into the field, and behold, I have seen and still see what I am not able to express. And he said to me, stand up like a man, and I will instruct you. Then I said, speak on, my master, only do not forsake me, lest I die before my time, frustrate of my expectation. For I have seen that which I did not know, and heard that which I do not comprehend. It's not mentioned here, but it's quoted in the foretellers, that Deuteronomy, and in the foretellers, that he's the one that, in the book of Job as well, he's the one that brings comprehension to the heart and endows man with chokmah, or wisdom, right? He's the one that makes known to us the things that we know not. So it's tying in other places of scripture here as well. Verse 36. Or is my sense deceived, or my inner being in a dream? Now, therefore, I entreat you to give your servant an explanation of this bewildering vision. Then he answered me and said, hear me, and I shall inform you, and tell you about the things which you are afraid of. For Yahuwah, the Most High, will reveal many secret things to you. He has seen that your way is right, for that you sorrow continually for your people, and make great lamentation for Zion. Just like it says that with much chokmah comes much sorrow, and bitterness of being with knowledge of the truth. When you come to these things in the truth of what we are actually living through, and how the literal seed of Abraham is all throughout the world in apostasy to the truth and eternal well-being, it pierces the heart. I don't know how anyone can not be completely dead to their emotions and not feel horrible.
Eric, sorry.
Sorry about that. My children were coming in and the dogs barked. But we'll continue again at verse 39. It says, he has seen that your way is right, for that you sorrow continually for your people, and make great lamentation for Zion. This, therefore, is the meaning of the vision which you have seen. The woman who appeared to you a little while ago, whom you saw mourning, and began to comfort her. But now see you the form of a woman no more, but there appeared to you an established city. And whereas she told you of the death of her son, this is the interpretation. This woman whom you saw, whom you now behold as an established city, is Zion. Whereas for her telling you that she was barren for 30 years, it is because there were 3,000 years in the world before any offering was made in her. And after 3,000, Shalomo built the city and offered offerings. And then it was that the barren woman bore a son. And as for her telling you that she brought him up with much care and labor, That was the period of dwelling in Yarushalem. And whereas she's saying to you, when my son entered his wedding chamber, he failed and died. That was the destruction which befell Yarushalem. And behold, you saw her likeness, and how she mourned for her son. You began to console her for what had happened, and of these happenings which have affected man's well-being. These are to be opened to you. For now Yahuwah the Most High sees that you are grieved unfeignedly, and suffer from your whole heart for her. So has he shown you the brightness of her splendor, and the comeliness of her beauty. Therefore I bade you to remain in the field where no house had been built. For I knew that the Most High Yahuwah would reveal these happenings to you. Therefore I commanded you to go into the field, where there was no foundation of any building. For in the place wherein the Most High Yahuwah reveals his city, there can be no building of men's hands that have stood there. And just for a tie-in with the anti-Mashiach for Dummies videos, it was the woman that was born on the wings of an eagle that went off into the wilderness to build a place to inhabit where he could dwell, where they made a place where they could have liberty of conscience and serve their creator according to how they comprehend the scriptures and not according to how someone dictated to them or forced them by violence. And therefore do not be afraid, and do not let your heart be affrighted. Sorry, I just had another tie-in come to mind. It was the same thing after the northern rain was taken and expelled out of the land by the Assyrian army. Those that had chosen to separate themselves and go to a place where no man dwelt, so that they could keep the Torah in the land, or in that place that they would not keep in the land. And it was the same picture, because that was Manasseh in foretelling. That was what they call the Scythians in history, what later became the Germanic peoples. But it was not all of them. It was only the group that decided to go over and head north above the Black Sea in the place called Ukraine. Those that were apostate were also kept in captivity in the place of Madai and other places that they were expelled to and spread out from. But it's the same picture that you have from the founding of America, with the separation of what became the Scythians, and they're keeping the Torah in a place not inhabited by man, establishing this truth where they would have liberty to serve their maker. It says, and therefore do not be afraid, and do not let your heart be affrighted, but go in and see the splendor and beauty and the vast greatness of the building, as far as it is possible for your eyes to be able to see. And then afterward you shall hear as much as your ears can comprehend. For you are more prosperous above many other, and you have been called before the Most High Yahuwah, as but few men have, or as but few have been. But tomorrow at night you shall remain here. And so shall the Most High Yahuwah show you visions of what the Most High will do to those who dwell on Eretz in the last Yamim, or days. So I slept that night and the following one as he commanded me. Oh, and then we read the eagle vision. If I recall, we covered that already. All right, that was a recap of something we had gone over already, and then we had read the eagle vision and the interpretation last Shabbat as well. So if anyone would like to see that, you can look at the video from the previous week, which would have been the last Sabbath of last year. And we're continuing on chapter 12, verse 40, grief over Ezra's absence. After he'd been receiving these visions and he'd been gone for a while, the people are grieved, as we'll read. It says, and it came to pass when all the people saw that the 7 Yamim were past, and that I did not come again into the city, they gathered themselves all together, from the least to the greatest, and came to me and said, how have we offended you, and what evil have we done to you, or have we done you, that you have forsaken us and sit in this place? For of all the foretellers, you alone are left to us, as a cluster of grapes from the vintage, and as a lamp in a dark place, and as a haven for a ship preserved from the tempest. It's an interesting connection I didn't really have before, but right here, as a cluster of grapes from the vintage. If you remember in the in that marching psalm that was announcing the beginning of the 7th trumpet that was issued in America during the Civil War, the bloodiest battle in American history on our soil, over 22,000 slain. It mentions that he is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. And I'd never really got the connection there. But right here, they're equating Ezra as the foreteller, as a cluster of grapes from the vintage that was stomped out in his wrath, when it's what they have left after Babylonian captivity and the destruction. So it's kind of the same picture there. It's rather interesting. He says, you alone are left to us as a cluster of grapes from the vintage, and as a lamp in a dark place, and as a haven for a ship preserved from the tempest. Are not the evils which have befallen us sufficient? Therefore, if you forsake us, how much better had it been for us if we also had been consumed in the burning of Zion? For we are no better than they that died there, and they wept with a loud voice. At this point, the people were still reasonable. They realized that they were not any better than the sinners that had perished. Just like our Mashiach said when the people had came to them about the ones that had been trying to make offerings, and they were attacked by Pilate and their blood was mixed with their offerings, or the ones in which the tower had fallen. He mentions, do you think that they were worse sinners than the rest of you? I say to you, no, but unless you repent, you shall perish in the same way. So Ezra comforts his people. Then answered I them and said, take hold of strong courage, O Yisrael, and be not heavy and sorrowful, O you house of Yaakov. For the Most High Yahuwah has you in remembrance, and the Almighty has not forgotten you in your struggle. As for me, I have neither forsaken you nor departed from you, but I have come to this place to pray on account of the desolation of Zion, and that I might seek loving kindness for the low estate of our sanctuary, or our set-apart place. And now go your way home every man, and after these Yamim will I come to you. So the people went their way into the city, as I commanded them to do. But I remained still in the field 7 Yamim, as the Melech commanded me, and did eat only of the flowers of the field, and had my food of the herbs during those Yamim. And this is the 6th vision, chapter 13, and it's the man from the sea. Before we go on, was there any comments or questions? Right. Verse 1. And it came to pass after 7 Yamim, I dreamed a dream in the night, and behold, a wind arose from the sea and stirred up all its waves. If you're remembering, the only thing that comes to mind about the winds, the wave, and the sea stirring up a storm or something like that, it reminds me of when Eliyahu was going to pray for rain again after the 3.5 years of no rain. And he sends his messenger multiple times to go see. And eventually they see a small cloud like a hand coming up. And he says, go, we need to warn them before the storm comes. But verse 2, and it says, and I looked, and behold, this wind made something like the figure of a man come up out of the heart of the sea. And I looked, and behold, that man waxed strong and flew with the clouds of the Shamayim. And wherever he turned his face to look, all things trembled under his gaze. If you remember, it's the clouds of witnesses mentioned in the book of Hebrews. And he rides in the clouds like the sun goes through the clouds, and it's traversing the sky. Same picture. And whensoever his voice went out of his mouth, all they melted that heard his voice, like wax melts when it feels the fire. And after this I looked, and behold, there was gathered together a multitude of men without number from the four winds of the Shamayim to war against the man that came out of the sea. But I looked, and behold, he carved out for himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. But I tried to see the region or place from which the great mountain was carved out, but I could not. Like the great mountain that smote the statue. And after this I looked, and behold, all they which were gathered together to wage war and subdue him were sore afraid, and yet dared to fight. And behold, as he saw the violent approach of the multitude, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any weapon of war. But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it were, a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and from his tongue he shot forth sparks and tempests. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell on the unrushing multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them all up, so that suddenly nothing was seen of the innumerable multitude, but only ash, dust, and the smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. Afterward saw I the same man come down from the mountain, and call to him another multitude which is peaceable, or of shalom. And there came many people to him, whereof some joyful, some sorrowful, and some of them bound, and some were bringing others as offerings. We'll read the interpretation before we have any comments, I think, just so we can see what he says himself. Request for the interpretation of the vision. And here's something I'd like to point out. It mentions in Ecclesiasticus that dreams and visions of the heart and things that are outside of the Torah are worthless when it comes to the belief unless you get an interpretation and he tells you it's directly from him. If you don't have these things when you have a dream, if you pray and you don't receive an explanation of it, it's not to be regarded. Yahushua, I believe, has stuff about what dreamers dream and those speaking his words and the differences between the two. And Ecclesiastes also goes into detail about the worthlessness of dreams in that aspect. But right here is an example, just like in Daniel and in, well, you don't see it in Yahusuf's dreams, but he interprets them as having the Ruach of our Elohim in him. So you get to see it in application there as well. But all over the place, when you get examples of dreams, the believers, including in the Shepherd of Hermas, they fast and pray and they seek the truth on how to comprehend it. But verse 14, says, then I was sick through great fear, and I awoke, and I besought the Most High Yahuwah, and said, from the beginning you have shown your servant these wonders, and have counted me worthy that you should receive my prayer. Now show me also the interpretation of this dream. For as I consider it in my comprehension, woe to them that shall be left in those Yamim, and still much more woe to those who do not survive. For those who do not survive will be sorrowful, because they comprehend what things that are laid up in the latter Yamim, but not obtaining it, but shall happen to them, and those that are left behind, and to those that are left behind. But woe also to those who do not survive, for this reason, because they shall see great perilous dangers and much distress for necessities, as these dreams declare. Yet it is better for them to come into these things through incurring perilous dangers than to pass away from the world like a cloud, and not to see the things that shall happen in the last Yamim. Just like his emissaries that were with him before his resurrection and breathing on them, they didn't comprehend the things that were going on even before them when he was with them. So even in this vision, you see he's showing him his first and second coming, but he doesn't quite comprehend how that's going to play out in the same pattern. The interpretation of the vision, verse 21. And he answered to me and said, I will tell you the interpretation of the vision, and I will explain to you the thing which you have inquired. Whereas you have spoken of them that are left behind, this is the interpretation. He who brings the peril at that time will himself protect those who fall into peril, who have works and have belief in the Almighty. Know this, therefore, that they which be left behind are more prosperous than those who have died. This is the interpretation of the vision. As for you seeing a man coming up from the middle of the sea, the same is he whom the Most High Yahuwah has kept a great season, which by himself shall deliver his creature, and he shall order and direct them that are left behind. And as for you seeing a blast of wind and fire and a storm coming out of his mouth, and as for his not holding sword or weapon of war, yet destroying the onrushing multitude which came to conquer and subdue him, this is the interpretation. Behold, the Yamim are coming, when the Most High Yahuwah will deliver them that are upon the Eretz or earth, and bewilderment of mind shall come over those who dwell on the earth or Eretz. And they shall plan to make war against one another, one city against another, one place against another place, people against people. That's probably the same ethnos in the Greek, which would be race. And kingdom against kingdom. And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen which I showed you before. And then shall my Son be revealed, whom you saw as a man ascending. And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the warfare they have against one another. And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as you saw, desiring to come and to conquer him by fighting. But he shall stand on the top of Mount Zion, and Zion shall come, and shall be shown to all men, being prepared and built, like as you saw the mountain carved without hands. And he, my son, shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked chesedlessness, or lack of loving kindness, which have fallen into the tempest. This was symbolized by the storm. And shall lay before them their evil thoughts and their torments, wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like to a flame. And he shall destroy them without effort by the Torah, which is like to me, which was symbolized by the fire. So we see that the one speaking to him now is the one who says the Torah is like him, which is like fire. And this is described by Kepha in the recognitions of Clement as our Mashiach, because he is the Torah and the Torah giver. But you see right here, just like our Mashiach said, he did not come to arbitrate or judge the world. There's one who's judging the world, and it's his word that shall judge men in the last yom. So the word of his mouth that's coming in and reproving men for their thoughts and actions. It's the same picture there. So the two are equated, and he is the Torah and the Torah giver, who is Elohim, the word, and man. All of that tying together there. So verse 13, or chapter 13, verse 39. And whereas you saw that he gathered to himself another multitude in shalom, or peaceable, they say, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hushea, or Hosha, the sovereign, whom Salmanasar, the sovereign of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where mankind had never dwelt. That I was just talking about that. That was literally when a remnant of them migrated above the Black Sea into what we call Ukraine today, but it was from the Danube to the Don rivers. And you see this quote, they're referencing Yeshayahu 19, verse 2, Mattanyahu or Matthew 24:7, Revelation 16:16, and also 19:19, and Daniel chapter 2, 34 through 45, and 2 Kings 17, 1 through 6. This was also remnant, like I was saying, this is reminiscent of the migration of the Puritans seeking a place where they can worship without harassment, and what culminated in the founding of America. Verse 42, that they might there keep the statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they went in by the narrow passages of the Euphrates River. For Yahuwah the Most High then shone signs for them, and held still the flood until they had passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years, and that country is called Azareth. In more modern maps and other places, you can find the river Sereth still as part of a tributary from the Dnieper, I believe it was, or it was the Danube, one of the two. But for anyone's interested, it's in the the northwestern section of the Black Sea is where you'd find that tributary or river. Verse 46. Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come, the Most High Yahuwah shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore saw you the multitude gathered together in Shalom. But those that be left behind of your people are they that are found within my borders shall be delivered. Now, and this is at the second. There's a lot of space here. We'll go over it in just a moment. Now, when he destroys the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, he shall defend his people that remain. And then shall he show them very many great wonders. And that would be during the millennial reign, where they're going to have manna, cloud cover by the Yom, fire by night over all the dwellings of his chosen. Excuse me. And other wonders of great effect. Then I said, actually, let's take a moment and we'll stop right there. Do you have any questions? Verse 51. Then I said, O sovereign Yahuwah, that bear rule, explain this to me. Why did I see the man coming up from the middle of the sea? And he said to me, like as you can neither seek out nor know the things that are in the deep of the sea, even so can no man upon Eretz see my son, or those that are with him, except in the time of his yom, or day. This is the interpretation of the dream which you saw. That's rather interesting to think that we can't see him until it's his yom, or when the truth is present with you is when you can comprehend it, is another way to see that. Verse 54. And you alone have been enlightened about this, because you have forsaken your own ways and applied yourself with diligence to mine and have searched out my Torah. See, our Creator is impartial, so he won't have a different standard for Ezra that he'd have for anyone else that sincerely desires to seek him. For as you have devoted and ordered your existence in Chokmah, or wisdom, and have called comprehension your mother, therefore I have shown you treasures. For there is a reward laid up with the Most High Yahuwah. And after another 3 Yamim, I will tell you other things and declare to you weighty and wondrous matters. Then I arose and walked in the field, giving praise and thanks and great splendor to Yahuwah the Most High, because of his wonders which he did in time, and because he governs the times and whatever things come to pass in their seasons. And there I sat 3 Yamim. The seventh vision, Yahuwah commissions Ezra. This is chapter 14. And it came to pass upon the 3rd Yom, I sat under an oak, and behold, there came a voice out of a bush opposite me, and said, Ezra, Ezra. And I said, Here I am, Yahuwah. And I stood upon my feet. Then he said to me, In the bush I did manifestly reveal myself to Moshe, and talked with him, when my people were in bondage in Mitzrayim. And I sent him and led my people out of Mitzrayim, and led him up upon Mount Sinai, of where I kept him by me many Yamim, or days, and told him many wondrous things, and shown him the secrets of the times, which we know about Yobelim, and declared to him the end of the times. Then I commanded him, saying, These words shall you declare, and these shall you hide. And that very thing is what he's going to enjoin Ezra with right here. And it's also something that is specifically mentioned by Kepha about his writings or his preaching that he had done after he had received the Ruach. He had a letter or an epistle that he wrote to Yaakov that's actually attached to the recognitions of Clement from Jackson Snyder's version. It's not actually part of that writing itself, but it was amended to it. In there, just a moment. So in the epistle that he wrote to Yaakov, he specifically enjoins him not to share his writings with anyone until they've been confirmed in the belief, and they've actually, like Moshe instituted with the elders and those chosen among the people to help him by arbitrating the smaller matters, they had to enjoin to be obedient to the one who was telling them these things. And Kepha enjoined the same thing for anyone who was going to study his words and the recognitions, because in them are the hidden treasures of Chokmah and knowledge. It mentions it, we'll read here in a moment. But in the apostolic constitutions, in the very same way, that is not meant for everyone, but it's meant for the overseers and the elders and those that are going to be held to a higher standard, because to whom much is given, much is expected. And it's not meant for everyone, especially those not desiring to walk right. If you are an apostate individual and you happen upon the hidden words and despise them, even though you get the interpretations, the actual meanings, the fullness of explanation that you can find in these writings, if you revile this and turn from it, you're incurring greater punishment. So it's his loving kindness that he's separated these things, and he doesn't let everyone, or he didn't let everyone willy-nilly go into these. They're freely available on the internet for whoever might look at them now, but that's not how it was meant to be. And it is something that we have to keep in mind. We're expected to do more when we have the information to do so. He says, "These words shall you declare, and these shall you hide. And now I say to you, that you lay up in your heart the signs that I have shown, and the dreams that you have seen, and the interpretations which you have heard. For you shall be taken away from all, and from henceforth you shall remain with my son, and with those such as be like you, until the times are ended." We first hear about this in the book of Yobelim and in the book of Chanok. Chanok first, he was transformed to be like a messenger brought before the Father. He was shown all things, including the messengers that dwell before the presence of the Almighty, in which he clearly stated that that was the expectation and the reward that he had in store for him, but it was not going to be given to him yet. Excuse me. He was taken and escorted into paradise, or Eden, as it's mentioned. And that is the place where the voice of Yahuah dwells with man. That's also repeated by Kepha in the recognitions of Clement, where he says that the Mashiach is he dwells in a certain place in the world with the righteous that are made perfect and don't taste death. I'm paraphrasing that, but it's the same information that you can see right here. This kind of secret stuff was revealed to those who had his Ruach, that were required to live obediently and to love even their enemies, like the examples that you can see of those that were of the foretellers. They were martyrs witnessing to their people. They were loving those who hated them. They manifested the truth in their existence. All right. "For you shall be taken away from all, and from henceforth you shall remain with my son, my Ben, and with those such as be like you, until the times are ended. For the world has lost its youthfulness, and the times begin to wax old. For the age of the world is divided into 12 parts, and 9 parts of it have already passed, and half of the 10th part, so that 2 of its parts remain, that which is after the half part of the 10th. Now therefore, set your house in order, and reprove your people, comfort the lowly among them, and instruct those that are prudent. These are all injunctions that you can find throughout the Proverbs, and different things for the conditions of who's supposed to be receiving what kind of thing from those that are representing the truth. He resists the proud, but gives succor and comfort to the lowly. He instructs those that are prudent become more prudent still. These are all things that he's still, it's same and consistent throughout the word. And now, renounce corruption and put away from you mortal thoughts. Cast away the burdens of man. Put off now the weak nature, and lay aside the thoughts that are most heavy and grievous to you, and hasten to flee from these times. For yet greater evils than those which you have seen happen shall be done hereafter. For the weaker the world becomes through old age, the more shall evils be multiplied among its inhabitants. For truth shall go further away, and falsehood shall come near. For the eagle which you saw in the vision is hastening to come. And at this time, it was about 490 years or so before the coming of our Mashiach, 400 so years, not 90, I apologize. It was still well before the beginning of the Caesars, which was with Julius Caesar after 63 BC. Ezra's prayer for inspiration to restore the scriptures. And this is something that is also mentioned in the book of Chanok, that he knew, our Mashiach speaking through him, he knew that men would not translate and keep his words trustworthily, but he foretold that when men do so, he'd tell us what would happen. It would unlock the treasures of Chokmah and the ability for the righteous to stand before our Maker. It's literally just like we'd mentioned in the Shabbat conference with Jackson Safont and the congregation of Elohim there. It was all playing together, where others might be looking for darkness and gloom. Our Creator, his works, what he's doing before the millennial reign is creating Adam in his likeness and image. So that's man being like our Mashiach. He also mentions in the foretellers that he will not come in enmity. So it's tying together there, but he's waiting for people or his bride to be prepared and made ready. If you remember, all of that has to do with the truth being revealed in us, conforming ourselves, giving ourselves completely to him, like it mentions in chapter 1 of Yobelim. All right, verse 19 here. Then I answered and said, let me speak in your presence, Yahuwah. Behold, Yahuwah, I will go as you have commanded me, and reprove the people which are present. But they that shall be born afterward, who shall admonish them? Thus the world is set in darkness, and they that dwell therein are without light. For your Torah is burnt. Therefore no man knows the things that are done of you, or the work that shall begin. But if I have found free unmerited favor before you, send the Ruach HaKodesh, or the set-apart Ruach, into me, and I shall write all that has been done in the world since the beginning, which were written in your Torah, that men may find your path, and that they which will exist in the latter Yamim may exist. And he answered me, saying, go your way, gather the people together, and say to them that they seek you not for 40 yamim. But look and prepare you many writing tablets, and take with you Sariah, Dabariah, Selemiah, Ethanas, and Asiel, these 5, because they are ready to write swiftly. That reminds me of there's one of the Psalms where he has the pen of a speedy writer. And he's talking about, it's actually the one I had quoted from the Apostolic Constitutions, where it was mentioning that our Mashiach was literally called the Father's name, Yahuwah. He's quoting the Psalm that you are more handsome than the sons of men, right? Anyways, verse 25. And come here, and I shall light a menorah of comprehension in your heart, which shall not be put out until the writings and purpose be performed. And when you have done, some writings shall you publish, and some writings you shall deliver in secret to the prudent. Tomorrow at this hour shall you begin to write. Ezra addresses the people. Then I went forth as he commanded me, and gathered all the people together, and said, Hear these words, O Yisrael. Our fathers in the beginning were strangers in Mitzrayim. From there they were delivered, and received the Torah of Chai, or existence, which they did not keep, which you also have transgressed after them. Then was the land, even the land of Zion, parted among you by lot for a possession. But you and your fathers committed iniquity and unrighteousness, and have not kept the ways which the Most High Yahuwah commanded you. And because he is a righteous judge, in due time he took from you what he had given you. And now are you here, and your brethren are farther in the interior. If you then will rule over your minds, and subdue your own comprehension, and discipline your hearts, you shall be kept alive, and after death you shall obtain loving kindness. For after death shall the judgment come, when we shall live again, and then the names of the righteous shall become manifest, and the deeds of the wicked shall be declared. Let no man therefore come to me now, nor seek me for 40 yamim. And this is Ezra's experience in the field. We'll just finish up this part, and I think that'll be a good place to pause it for this Shabbat. So I took the 5 men as he commanded me, and we went into the field and remained there. And the next yom, behold, a voice called me, saying, Ezra, open your mouth and drink that I give you to drink. Just like Ezekiel or Yechezkiel was told to eat the little book, and Yahukanan was told to consume it as well. In this one, he's told to drink. Then opened I my mouth, and behold, he reached me a full cup, which was full as it were with water, but the color of it was like fire. And I took it and drank, and when I had drunk it, my heart poured forth comprehension, and chokmah increased in my breast, for my ruach strengthened and retained my memory. When we drink the water of his word, which is like fire, we too can have comprehension and chokmah increased in our breast. And especially if we receive it like the unadulterated milk of the word, after we've cleansed our lives in obeying the truth. Because without belief, it's impossible to please him. And it says in the Septuagint version of Yeshayahu that if you do not believe, neither will you comprehend. Belief without works is dead. So it all ties into the same thing. We actually have to do what he said to have our Mashiach indwelling in us and being active, which is also clearly stated by Kepha in the recognitions. Verse 41, and my mouth was opened and shut no more. And the Most High Yahuwah gave comprehension to the 5 men, and by turns they wrote the wonderful visions of the night that were dictated, which they knew not. And they sat 40 yamim, and they wrote in the yam, and at night they ate bread. As for me, I spoke in the yam, and I held not my tongue by night. In 40 yamim, they wrote 94 books. In other versions, it says 204. I can't say which one's more accurate, but I tend to lean towards this one. And if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, and if you, as we see here, there's 24 books that were for the worthy and the unworthy, which is what we call the Old Testament or the Old Covenant writings. Although they've broken up how they enumerate those books, so it seems like there's more. And then if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a slew of other writings that were there aside from the canonical or the open scriptures. That would be the hidden writings that he had also written at that time, at least what was available to him. It says, and it came to pass when the 40 yamim were completed, that the Most High Yahuwah spoke to me, saying, the first 24 books that you have written, publish openly, that the worthy and unworthy may read them. But keep the 70 last, that you may deliver them only to such as be prudent among the people. For in them is the wellspring of comprehension, the fountain of Chokmah, and the river of knowledge. And I did so. All right. And I think that's a wonderful place for us to pause for, at least right now. We'll see if there's any comments or questions that we're going to keep recording. But if not, everyone have a wonderful Shabbat, and we will see you next time.